Good evening, everyone. We just completed chapter 42. We are about to start 43. The way to study the next chapter and the following is we can delve in deep or we can just skim through. And I believe that skimming through will keep us with the flow and get an idea of what the Rabbi wants. Until now, in the last two chapters, the Rabbi was talking about the most basic of fear of God. The most basic, because it is external and it is easy for everyone. You don't need to use intelligence. You don't need to have meditation. All you do is look around the universe, realize God is watching, and therefore we're going to be accountable for what we do. So we better watch out. In other words, fear of God should lead to the performance of mitzvot, not out of deep contemplation or study of deep Kabbalah, just simple basic rules that we take upon ourselves. And in that way, that the Gemara, the Torah tells us, God is only asking of you fear God. It's no big deal. The Rabbi now is going to take the other extreme, that the idea of fear or awe and respect for God can be a much higher, much deeper and internal relationship with God. Because the Rabbi is going to speak about, in general, there are three levels of yirah, awe, respect for God. And importantly, most importantly, it is the ability to bond with God on a deeper level. So in order for me to explain, there is a very good example in relationship. I'm married. I may be home on time because that's what my spouse said, and I fear the retaliation, the consequences. Simple as that. Do I need to be a smart, intelligent person? No. Actually, if I'm too intelligent, I'll find excuses and create a lot of chaos. Sometimes the simpler, the better. But that's not a relationship between two people.
Right, what if you're home, but you're not present?
You're not present, exactly. You just showed up physically.
Right, because you're afraid.
In other words, you made the finish line, but there is nothing there. The real purpose in relationship is to have an internal bonding, not just external. I cannot just be physically present, but not internally, not my essence. There is another type of respect. Let's not talk about love because that's the second half of the chapter. I respect my wife so much that I'm indebted to her. I don't feel comfortable after she has prepared such a nice meal, cooked for so long, and all she asks is for me to show up, and I show up late. It doesn't make sense. I don't feel good about that. When I show up, I feel good. More importantly, I bond. I create a relationship because I do it out of great respect and admiration for what she or the spouse is providing. With God, we see that sometimes the Torah tells us that fear of God is the foundation to relationship. Sometimes we see that it's the ultimate in the relationship. In other words, the Rabbi, as we're going to see, I believe in the chapter, the Rabbi is going to bring that in some places we call it the key to the house. Another place we call it the house. The study of Torah is the key. But to enter the house and be in a relationship, you need to have fear of God. Fear, not fear of punishment, fear out of respect. And the Rabbi is going to explain. And also, the Mishnah tells us, without fear, there is no Torah. Without Torah, there is no fear. So the question is, what comes first? And the Rabbi is going to justify these two contradictory statements with saying that there are two levels of fear. The first, the key to the relationship, is just obey and do as you are told, even if it's against your nature, even if you hate that, even if you wish you were somewhere else at this time. The second, once you enter the house, you need to realize that the relationship is going to flourish and you're going to bond internally when you have respect and admiration for the partner. That's when the relationship takes hold and gets into. And for that, the Mishnah says that the Torah is an introduction to that type of relationship. In other words, we study Torah to discover what God wants, to please God, to show God how much respect we have for God, so that we dedicate our time to the study of Torah.
That basically menschlichkeit, whether you know fear, God, and so on. I mentioned treat people right. That's showing God that you're following those footsteps, no?
So Harry is asking, isn't that menschlichkeit that what?
Just being a Mishnah means being kind to others, do things right.
Be kind to others, do the right things, right? That's only when you have a smooth sailing. But what happens when there is a storm? When you have friends who pull you in a different direction? When there is money to be made, if you open up your shop on Shabbos? If there is temptation, if it's not if, it's when. There is temptation all the time. That's the issue we have. Relationship between two, I'm going to use a simple metaphor because to me it speaks very well. When I have a relationship with my spouse, do you think that every day is a great relationship? The answer is it's a very tough and challenging, and there are ups and downs continuously. Don't tell my wife I said that. The goal is to come to an end, the end of the day, the end of the project, when we work together and respect one another. So when you talk about being a menschlichkeit, it's all good in philosophy. But in reality, we all know it's just not going to cut it. You're going to be...
That is more superficial, but certainly not as deep or complex as a relationship with God or a relationship with your spouse.
Right.
It's much more
That's the point.
the layers are deep.
That's the point, and I'm dissecting it. All I'm saying is that in relationship, you have ups and downs. There is no smooth sailing. It's not always, it's not static. It's dynamic. So you will have a challenge. You lost a job. There is a roof leak. There is a delay. The car is not working. And then starts. And then in addition, you have, everything else that's involved in relationship that does not allow for just being menschlich is not sufficient. Then when it comes to God, the temptation and the challenges are far greater. We're reading on page 653, chapter 43. I would like to read the introduction of Rabbi Weinberg. The Alter Rebbe explained in the previous chapter that every Jew has the ability to attain Yirah Tata'a. Tata in Aramaic means lower. Yirah is fear. Lower level of fear is attainable by all men, regardless. There is no need for an intelligence. There is no need for a background. There is no need for understanding the Torah. The lower level of fear of God. This enables him to perform all the positive commandments and refrain from transgressing all the negative commandments. In the present chapter, the Alter Rebbe goes on to explain the two levels of fear of God, Yirah Tata'a and Yirah Ilaa, the lower and higher level of fear, respectively. So there is going to be two levels of fear of God, a higher level and a lower level. This distinction clarifies a seeming contradiction. The Mishnah first states, if there is no wisdom, there is no fear of God. Wisdom must precede fear. But the Mishnah then goes on to say, if there is no fear of God, there is no wisdom. Fear must precede wisdom. I shared with you in Ethics of Our Fathers, the Mishnah says, no fear, no wisdom. No wisdom, no fear. The question is, where do you start? The explanation is as follows. The Mishnah refers to the two above-mentioned level of fear. The first statement, if there is no fear, there is no wisdom, refers to the low level of fear, Yirah Tata'a, Without this level of fear, it is impossible to attain wisdom, that is, the performance of Torah and the mitzvot. This is deemed wisdom, the mitzvot, since the ultimate purpose of wisdom is the repentance and good deeds. The second statement, if there is no wisdom, there is no fear, refers to the higher level of fear, yirאה, עילאה. This level of fear must be preceded by wisdom, that is, the performance of Torah and mitzvot. Only thus is one able to attain the higher level of fear. So we start in the relationship with God. We start with just obeying God. That's called low level of fear. Then once we establish that relationship, we study Torah, perform mitzvot. Now that we study Torah, we are able to contemplate and reach a higher level of fear, which is respect and awe for God. The Alter Rebbe also explained in this chapter that just as there are two general levels of fear of God, there are also two general levels of love of God. And the second half of the chapter is dealing with the two levels of love. Here is the Rebbe's words. Page 654. Concerning this level of יראת תתאה, lower level of fear, of which it was said in the previous chapter that it is in the province of every Jew, which is necessary for the fulfillment of its commandments in both areas of turn away from evil and do good, that is, the performance of negative and positive commands. It was said by our sages in Ethics of Others, if there is no fear, there is no wisdom. If fear of God is lacking, then one cannot properly fulfill the Torah and mitzvot. If there is no fear, there is no wisdom. In other words, if you study Torah because you just want to enjoy the intellect, you will never bond with God. You will never connect to God. The purpose of Torah and mitzvot is to connect to God, and therefore it must be preceded with a lower level of fear. The lower level of fear, comprises a mode of smallness and a mode of greatness. In there are two levels. There is a small, minor, and there is a major one. The quality of smallness describes the fear which is experienced as a result of a Jew's innate fear of God, and which is merely revealed through meditating upon matters that lead to the fear of God. Since it does not result from contemplating God's greatness, it is deemed small. The quality of greatness characterizes the fear of God that results from contemplating God's greatness, as it can be discerned from creation. We already discussed it before. So you have two levels of fear. One is a natural one. The other one is inborn, by contemplating, looking around the universe, realizing there is an order, there is a creator, and therefore I am accountable for everything that happens. This means, that is, the fear has the quality of greatness when this category of the low level of fear is a result of contemplation on the greatness of God, as it is perceived through his providing life to creation, that he fills all the worlds. Says the Rebbe, God provides all worlds with vitality by vesting himself in them. This life force is attuned to the innate spirituality of the particular world or created being in which it is vested. The higher the world or created being, the loftier its life force. And from the earth to the heavens is a distance of 500 years. And the distance from the heaven to the next is also a journey of 500 years. And the feet, that is, the lowest level of the angels, called Chayot, measure up to them all another 500 years. The low level of the Chayot is transcend all other levels. What the Rabbi, as I said, we're going to go over because if we take the time, it's going to take very long, and it's a very deep philosophical Kabbalistic teaching. What the Rabbi is saying is, the universe that God created, if we just, without studying Kabbalah, just looking around the universe, we discover godliness in every part of the universe. when we start meditating and contemplating upon it, we realize that God has created it for a purpose. Otherwise, you would not be vested with so much energy and so perfect a universe where the sun rises and sets, and we have different flavors and different colors and universes and nature. And the deeper we go, the more we discover about nature, the more we see how perfect the universe is. That alone creates a relationship of respect and fear of God. I don't want to disobey God. If God said to me, eat kosher, I know it's good for me, even though it's much more expensive. But that's the way God. If God says rest on Shabbat, at the time when people kept Shabbat in the desert and 2,000 years ago, they were mocked by the nations of the world. There's people that waste time. How is it possible for you to not walk on Shabbat, not milk the cows, and not farm? If you don't do it, it breaks the week. You are lazy people. It will cause you a lot of loss. Today, we all see that the universe operates better when the world takes a break every 6 days. Some make it even 5-day week. We know the Torah says that even the animals must rest on Shabbat. We know. I was afraid of this question. You, a goy, an Andrew.
Can you set up machinery before Shabbat to move them automatically?
So, no, I grew up in a farm, so I know about that. We would have non-Jews come in and they would milk the cow and take it for themselves because they're not allowed to benefit from it. If the goy did not show up, there were Arabs, so many times they would get stopped by the security forces. Then the Jew is allowed, I believe, to milk them into the ground. Not allowed to benefit from the milk, just for the pain of the animal. But milking a cow is forbidden on Shabbat. Why? The animal must rest. So we let the roosters and the hens and the chickens roam free on Shabbat. Not allowed to hunt them. Not allowed to catch them. I had a neighbor who had horses. Sometimes the horse get mad. I think I shared with you a lot of experiences we had. The horse ran away. They break loose of the time, and they are literally very dangerous. They start running around like mad. When the owners catches them far, miles away, you're not allowed to harness them. You're not allowed to put the, what do you call the reins. Not allowed. Not allowed to ride on the horse. So what do they do if it happens on Shabbat? If it happens on a weekday, usually it happens on Shabbos. You know why?
The horse is smart.
Because the children, we used to start up with the horses. When can we do it on Shabbat? There was nothing else to do. On the week they were in school, and the horse is carrying loads. He's carrying the wagons. He's walking around. On Shabbos, he's tied to the pole, and we have nothing to do, looking for action. We find the horse. So when they would bring him back, they would literally need to be so gentle with the horse and carry him, hold on his back, put their hand on the back and walk with him, because you cannot put the reins, you cannot you cannot saddle them, and definitely you're not allowed to ride on a horse on Shabbos. So animals need to rest. The Torah tells us the land must rest. Every 6 years should stay fallow. Now, 2,000 years ago, people look at the Jewish people and they say they're meshuggah. Today, farmers, they farm, and every 2-3 years, they give the land a break. Anybody heard about it?
You have to rotate crops.
They're rotating the crops. The rotation is not just the crops, I think, but also the land itself.
Yeah, yeah.
You just one section,
Yeah.
right? You give it a break, a season, a year.
Dust Bowl in Oklahoma and Nebraska, and that was the problem. They never gave the land a rest so that nothing.
There's no nutrient.
Correct.
You
couldn't
drain all the
couldn't
nutrients out.
plant.
The nutrient got drained. We have a member here who owns lots of land in the West, And when he was at the class once, he said, of course, every farmer today knows that they plow, they plant one part, half, and the next year they do that, they keep rotating. Some of them they'll do every 3 years, they'll give it a break. Torah tells us every 6 years you give it a break. At the time, people were marking it down. Today we know it's part of nature. It's obvious, like most of the Torah rules. So when the Torah says keep kosher, you keep kosher. When the Torah says don't do business on Shabbat, you don't do business on Shabbat. That you don't need to be an intelligent person contemplating deep Kabbalistic, understanding the relationship between me and God and how who's pleasing God is important for me. You just do it by learning. The universe is so complex and my knowledge of the universe is so minute. And if God created it and he told us that's the way to operate in the universe, we do it. That's called a greater level of fear, but the fear is a very low type of fear. That's the introduction to the relationship. In other words, when I talk to people who want to get married, I say to them, the first thing in a marriage is you respect the partner. So if the partner asks for something, but before you ask, why can I change your mind? But when somebody asks you, fulfill their desire. If you're not doing it, you're not in a relationship. There's no relationship. Therefore, if I do every time you explain me why, or I do every time I understand why, that's we're in trouble. The relationship with God must sits on the foundation of just doing what God said so. After that, you acquire knowledge. Now you can say, I respect you. I want to do but are you open to a discussion? Can we discuss it? Why do you want to buy this car? Why you want to move that way? Why you want to take this course? And we are entitled for an answer. But this is only after we have established a relationship where we respect the partner wishes and the most basic. Says the Rebbe, that's why, and that's what the Rabbi is saying. The universe is very finite. The Talmud tells us the distance between one universe and the other is 500 light years. Don't ask me what 500 years are. It's not in space. It's in time. It's in time, not space. And the angels, the hills of the angels, to climb from the hill, the start until the end of the hill, it takes 500 years. Don't ask me what it means, because as I said, we're not going to discuss it now, because an hour a week is not going to be sufficient. All we see is that it's a finite universe that was created precisely and operate in a perfect mode. It does not change. Everything follows a pattern. Therefore, there must be a creator, and he wants me to be a servant. He wants me to establish a relationship. How do I do that? By accepting the yoke of God. Now, once I do that, then we can start studying Torah, which is called wisdom in the Mishnah's terminology. So if there is no fear of God, there is no wisdom. You will not be able to accept and keep the Torah and study mitzvot. Study Torah and keep the mitzvot unless you have established fear of God. Once you establish fear of God, that's when you are now, if there is no wisdom, there is no fear. We're going to talk about the second one. I just want to share, and I don't need to mark any other movement, but I obviously, in this town in particular, I'm dealing with most people who come from a reform background, reform, conservative, people who do not have the background that I enjoyed coming from a traditional home. There is a member, she is still active, who came from another state, and she was very active at the temple at the time. She was on the board. And she told me that there is the striking difference between the rabbi, a reform rabbi, and here, which is in one word, which is called bitul, nullification. She says that the rabbis in the reform are told that they have to lead. How do you lead? You make decisions and you make sure that you understand everything. If something does not make sense to you, You say, we don't do it. We don't have to. You come to a traditional place, the rabbi is there just to show what God wants. Does it make sense? No. Is it very expensive? Yes. It creates a lot of discomfort, a lot of challenges, a lot of difficulties, but that's the way God wants. And the rabbi is a role model to the idea of bitul. And I believe this is the idea of the gateway, the key to relationship with God, which is fear of God. When I say fear, just realizing that God runs the show. Every avenue, every dimension, you look at the universe, it is a perfect universe that has a creator, and the creator puts me here for a specific number of days, years, hours, for a specific job. And that job must be fulfilled. Otherwise, I'm lacking. And I am missing out on something, a gift that was provided me. Therefore, I shouldn't be jealous of other people. I am very lucky to be around, no matter what challenges come my way, no matter what other people do or don't do. It has nothing to do with me, because my specific purpose in life is whatever sets of requirements or talents I was given, and that's my job. Somebody else has a different mission. Just like you go on a plane, you have a pilot, you have a flight attendant. You have different kind of jobs, and everybody follow. As long as they do their job, the universe is a perfect universe. Mashiach, by the way, Mashiach will arrive. It will reveal. He will reveal to us what my purpose is, and we'll see it. And then we will see how by fulfilling my job helps in the entire project and makes the universe a perfect universe. So there will be no jealousy. There will be no hate. There will be no lawsuits. There will be no animosity. Because when I'm getting jealous, or I sue somebody, or I'm upset at somebody, I am just rejecting the knowledge, the notion that I'm here for a specific purpose. It has nothing to do with that purpose and their success or failing, and their achievements and their doing and or not doing. That's why if we have the bitul, the nullification to God, that's the key to our relationship. Now we can acquire wisdom. Now we can fulfill the mitzvot. Now we can study Torah, and we don't feel left out. We don't feel that we have it so much difficult than everybody else. I wish I had less of a challenge, because we realize I'm here for that purpose. That specific purpose is not assigned anybody else but myself. Says the Rebbe, I'm reading Rabbi Weinberg's explanation. When a person contemplates and gains a deep understanding of the divine life force that provides life to all worlds and spiritual levels, and hence attains a fear of God, when this understanding may be described by the term greatness, however, if this is the case, why then is this level considered part of tετאה, the lower level of fear? The rabbi is asking, why is it called the lower level of fear? The Alter Rebbe answers this by explaining that since this fear derived from contemplation of godliness, as it fills all worlds, and thus is bound up with them, it is necessarily a lower level of fear. Why? For this life force is concealed in the worlds in such a way that they are still able to be aware of their own existence and being. At this level, the worlds merely nullify their being and existence in deference to their life force. This is termed bitul hayesh, the self-nullification of being that is aware of its own existence. I'm not going to go into the details what the rabbi explained. All I'm going to say is it's called a lower level of fear because it's the basic, it's the start. We need to understand there is a God who created the universe, runs the show, has a plan, and each screw, each circle, each chip, each piece there is for a purpose. And when one wants to do someone else's job, they're messing up the whole system. But we call it a lower level because it's attainable to everybody. Because you don't need to be a great scholar, Torah scholar. It's the start of the relationship. But obviously, as mentioned before, you are not there. Your essence is not there. Your body is there, but there is no deep relationship. Says the Rebbe, nevertheless, page 656. This fear is called an external and inferior fear, יראה תתאה, a lower level of fear. Why? Since it is derived from the worlds, that is, from understanding the greatness of God as a result of meditating upon the divine life force which animates them. So the relationship with God is established based on my understanding of the universe, and therefore it's called a very low level fear. There is another reason it is called, as the Rebbe is going to explain now, it's external. It's called a lower or inferior level of fear because it's very external. I connect to God out of fear of punishment. I connect to God and obey God because I have no choice. I don't want to get hurt. And that's called an external. My essence is not really connected. For they are garments of the King, the Holy One, blessed be He, who conceals and hides and clothes Himself in them in these worlds, to animate them and give them existence that they may exist ex nihilo. Says Rabbi, the energy of God in this universe is so external, and I'm all connecting to that level of godliness. It's very external. In addition, as I said, it's external because my essence is not there.
It's wrong and to embrace your.
No, it's the start. It's the key to entering the room, without which you cannot have any relationship. But it must not be it. You cannot continue. You cannot stop there. You must continue on to the next level. As the Rebbe, it is only that these spheres serve as the gate and entrance to the performance of Torah and mitzvot. And now the Rabbi is going to talk about the higher level. In other words, I told you, in a relationship between two spouses, if one failed to respect the wish of the other, there is no relationship. However, fulfilling the wish of my partner just out of fear of retaliation, of punishment, of revenge, you can't call it a relationship. I'm not there. It's the gate. It's just the start. There has to be a relationship that's much, much greater, and that's where wisdom comes, which in the relationship with God, it's the study of Torah and mitzvot. Now I discover deeply what God is about, and that establishes a much deeper relationship. Yes, Harry?
Do a mitzvah, whatever you do, because you don't want to be punished, that's not enough.
That's the gate. That's a given. Let me start. Let me drive this point home from a different angle. I'm not going to go back and forth with question and answers because I think it's obvious. If someone is cheating on a spouse, not intimate or emotional, with words, the guy puts on his coat and says, I'm going. For how long? For an hour. He knows he's not going for an hour because he's going playing billiard and he's going to come home at midnight. It's lying, cheating. Do you understand? Do you agree that there is no relationship there? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Why not? That's it, you got it. In other words, that's the most basic. If someone cheats, I'm not talking about hurting the relationship and transgressing what a relationship between spouses is. I'm talking about a relationship between father and child, okay? Let's talk about mother and daughter. If a daughter tells her mom, don't worry, I will not drive over the speed limit. And that's what she did. Okay, so it's a mother and daughter. There is a problem in the relationship. There is an issue with the daughter not understanding what relationship is. Because relationship is respecting the wish and telling the truth. As soon as someone tells a lie, they're not in a relationship anymore. Did I clear this? Is simple. You cannot stop there. the missing, the void of that means there is no relationship. But if I'm honest with my spouse, or with my children, or with my parents, it doesn't mean I have a relationship. It means I'm starting a connection. The true relationship is when I bond, I connect, each one at a level. Between an employer and employee, it's one level, performing well. Between two spouses is being there, providing emotional support, being for one another, doing my share in the relationship. Between parents and children, depending on the age, picking up the phone and calling, showing care, being there for them, visiting, that's a relationship. I do it not out of fear of retaliation. That's the higher level of fear, which is respect. I respect my partner, my parent, my child, whichever it might be, my boss. And for that, I provide, and I do. And for God, in God's realm, it is studying the Torah and performing the mitzvot. Now I discover the essence, much deeper relationship with God. I establish, God allows me to have a relationship. If my relationship is based on fear only, it's external. I'm not there. God is not there. It's only the aspect of God that's expressed in the universe. But if it's through wisdom, now if there is no wisdom, there is no fear. Do you want to reach a higher level of wisdom or fear? You must have that wisdom of understanding and connecting to God. Did I make myself clear? Harry, did you understand that? However, page 657 on top, says the Rebbe, however, as for Ilאה, a fear stemming from a sense of shame before God's greatness, and an inner, I'm skipping the commentary, and an inner fear that derives from the inward aspects of godliness within the world. Now we're going deeper to establish a true relationship wherein a person is cognizant of the inward and essential aspects of godliness, and not only the external qualities of godliness which are clothed in all the worlds. The worlds are wholly nullified before these inward aspects of godliness with a complete and total nullification, bitul bamtziut. Awareness of this higher level of nullification leads to the higher level of fear, Ilאה. And this, concerning this level of fear, it was said by our sages, if there is no wisdom, there is no fear. This level of fear must be prefaced by wisdom. Now you have to study Torah, you have to perform the mitzvot, and then you can discover the essence of God and have great shame before God for dedicating my time into the study of Torah, dedicating my time to refrain from doing something which is inappropriate. Says the Rebbe, for Chokhmah, this is a deep Kabbalah, for Chokhmah is Koach Ma. Chokhmah is two words, Koach, power, Ma of nothingness. The level of nullification which is termed Ma, what? Is the verse says, and we are Ma, we are nothing. A phrase that expresses the complete and total nullification which is termed Bitul Bamtziut, and Chokhmah comes from Ayin, from nothingness, for which reason Chokhmah is Ayin and nullified. What the Rabbi wants to say, I'm not going to get into the deeper Kabbalah here. What the Rabbi wants to say is, you know what, the universe was created from nothing. The universe was created from nothing. Ex nihilo. And therefore, Chokhmah came from nothing. And that's why the universes are completely nullified before God. Because it started from nothingness before God. Once we discover that, we nullify ourselves to such a great level that we are embarrassed before the greatness of God, and that leads to a much deeper level of respect for God. That's the point the Rabbi is going to make. Ali, do you follow? Ooh, that's great. And our sages said, moreover, who is wise? He who sees that which is born and created, That is to say, there are many, this is a statement in Ethics of Our Fathers. There are many ways of explaining it. Here is the Kabbalistic interpretation. This is to say that the wise person is he who sees how everything is born and created from nothing, not being to being by means of the words of God and the breath of his mouth, as it is written, and by breath of his mouth all their host were created. A Zeu Chacham, who is a wise man, who is a smart man, Aroeh, someone who sees et anolad, what was created. In other words, when I contemplate about the creation of the universe, realizing it came from nothingness, then I realize how great God is, that in order for the universe to be created, there had to be a total separation from God. And if God yet is busy and he is watching me closely, every move I do, I go. It must be that I am ashamed for doing anything to disrespect God. Therefore, the heavens and the earth and the host, that is, all of creation, are truly nullified out of existence within the word of God and the breath of his mouth. The level of the nullification is thus not that a bitul ayesh, but a bitul bamtziut, a complete nullification, and are accounted as nothing at all, as not and nothingness. Indeed, just as the light and brightness of the sun are nullified within the body of the sun itself, just like rays of light, they have no value compared to the sun's rays. The sun's ray that emanated out of the sun, compared to the sun, it has no value. Even though it's very powerful, it brings light to the universe, but you bring it closer to the sun and it doesn't exist there, even though it's part of the sun, because the sun is so powerful that the ray is totally nullified. The universe is totally nullified before God. And the point the Rabbi is going to make is that would lead us, so the more we discover about God, the deeper our respect and awe for God. And no man should accept himself from this principle, from the principle governing all created beings, about which he understands that they are totally nullified to God. He should realize that also his body and nefesh, ruach and neshama, his soul, are utterly nullified in the word of God that created them, and his word is united with his thought, and God's thought in turn is one with God himself. Thus the nullification is not only to God's word, but is a total nullification to God himself, as has been explained above at length in chapter 20-21, by analogy with the human soul, one otherness of those of whose speech and thought are veritably as nothing when compared to the power of speech, which is limitless. We spoke in chapter 20 and 21, take one word of my life, of speaking endlessly, and compare that to the power of speech in the brains, and that power of speech in the brain, compare it to my soul. There is no value whatsoever. This is farther from God creating the universe. And yet God wants me to keep Shabbat. He wants me to keep kosher. He wants me to be honest in business. That creates a great awe and respect for God. And this is what it is meant by the verse, behold, the fear of God, that is wisdom, meaning, for as explained earlier, the level of yirah, ilaa, and bitul b'mtziut is the same as wisdom. It too is essentially bitul b'mtziut. Says Rabbi, however, one cannot attain this fear and wisdom except by means of the fulfillment of the Torah and mitzvot through yirah titאה, which is an external fear. And this is what is meant by the statement, if there is no fear, there is no wisdom. First must come yirah titאה and the resulting performance of Torah and mitzvot. Only then can one attain wisdom, yirah, ilaa, and bitul b'mtziut. And we're going to stop right here. So what the Rabbi is saying is, there are two levels of fear of God. There is one that's called the key to the entrance. Without the key, you cannot enter. But that's just the key. It's not the room itself. That's called fear of punishment, knowing that God wants me to obey him, disobeying, disconnect me from God. That's called an external because I do not bond, not my essence and not with God's essence. Then it leads to wisdom. Wisdom refers to Torah and mitzvot, study Torah and obey God's commandments. That would lead to the contemplation how great God is and how far we are and how totally nullified, completely nullified before God. And yet God wants me to keep Shabbat. He wants me to tell the truth. He wants me to be kind to one another. By establishing this, we are creating fear and awe, respect for God. That would be established only through the first two parts. One is the external fear, and the second is the wisdom. Wisdom is the general word for study Torah and perform mitzvot. The rabbi now is going to talk about love of God. There are two levels of love of God, and that we'll discover in the next lesson. Yes.
So involved, it's so enigmatic, it's so puzzling. All I think about it is that, and when Psalmist said at the end of with the Mishnah, it says, just remember one thing: do what God tells you to do and be stuck.
Very good.
So honestly, I can remember so many things. It's almost like you feel like you're nothing, but you're here to serve.
Such a wise, you're very wise.
Father wouldn't agree with me. By the way, I want everybody to hear this. You talked about a reform rabbi. This guy buys a Rolls Royce. And he remembers his grandfather gave him from these like a bracha.
All right, hold on. Good night, everybody. Yeah, we know the story. It wasn't a Rolls Royce, it was a Jaguar.
Or you tell him.